In tonight's program, this is a reminder that this episode will address various topics related to mental health, amongst other things, and we'll have a reminder about multiple sclerosis. These may be sensitive to some of our viewers. Viewer discretion, as always, is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and/or mental health regime. If you're looking for options with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and it's a confidential, free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Importantly, if you're feeling suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, call or text the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. Once again, call or text 988, or you can go to 988lifeline.org. Those resources are also available 24/7, 365. You are not alone, and you don't have to go through this alone. You are worth it. And then this disclaimer would be empty without a reminder about something that has been going on in my life for the last 2 years, but ever since the first demyelination, the last 12 years. The National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information within the body and between the brain and the body, and also within the brain, so all three. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world. They're investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Once again, 1-800-344-4867. Or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. Thank you. Thank you to all of you who have gone to the National MS Society to learn more about demyelination and multiple sclerosis, or have even gone to the National MS Society to leave a donation for this amazing organization. It touches me and over the 1 million people in this country who have multiple sclerosis in so many ways, and we appreciate it. And on that, let's begin. Good evening, and welcome to the Venture Forward. I am John Venturini, a recovering addict of alcoholism, overeating, obesity, and compulsive gambling, and it is an honor and pleasure to see all of you tonight on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. It's funny, I've had a conversation about this episode a couple days ago, and I was telling the person, I don't know if I'm really ready to give this episode. I don't know if I'm in the sort of mind space to give this episode. And they informed me that the episode that you don't want to give is definitely the episode you do want to give, or you should give rather. So, for lack of better terms, I've had some apprehension about this episode. I know we've talked about mental health in the past, but I think with everything that's been going on, especially in this world, especially in the last 2.5, 3 years, every time we talk about this, it is a very real topic. I know family, I know friends that have had mental health be very much a cornerstone of anything that they're going through. So when we talk about this, please realize that I am also going through this, have gone through this the last 3, almost 4 years, but I know there's plenty of you that are going through this as well. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Actually, this is a two-parter. Tonight, we're going to talk about mental health in general. On Tuesday night, we're going to talk about how I began my mental health journey and the sort of basically the pathways I've gone down as far as my mental health improvement and my mental health sort of clarity. But before we begin, let's see who is on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. And the door prize tonight goes to Marilyn over on YouTube, who says, "Good evening, JV," with 3 waves and 3 purple hearts. 3 waves and 3 blue hearts back at you. Hope you're having a great evening. We also have Brad Kendall on YouTube, who says, "Hey, hey, hey." Well, Brad, hey, hey, hey to you. Hope you're doing well. Couple of other comments that I'm really just trying to see here. One more comment from Brad, who says, "Sending you super awesome, good, great, grand, wonderful vibes for this show. JV, love you, brother. You got this." Thank you, Brad. I appreciate that. It's a tough topic. Mental health is a real tough topic. And as this venture audience knows, I am not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just someone who has gone through these motions and has taken the time to learn a thing or two about what he's been practicing. And that's why I'm sharing it with all of you. As we say, as always, if you're looking to help improve your mental health or physical regime, go see a counselor or a doctor or whatnot. So that's definitely the disclaimer for every episode of this show, and will continue to be as we go forward. So that said, let's talk about this episode. This episode that I wasn't so excited to talk to because it's a tough topic. But here we go. Venture Forward, episode 5.4, October 27th, 2022, the increased importance of mental health. In this time in our country and in our world, mental health has taken more of a focus each and every day. So we have to talk about this. We have a duty to talk about this. So this is how the show is going to go tonight. We're going to do a language of letting go. We're going to talk about self-value. Probably the shortest language of letting goes you've ever seen, but it is a very poignant message for tonight's topic. We're going to have a reminder about the numbers we talked about at the disclaimer. It's worth mentioning again. We'll talk about some statistics with respect to mental health, as far as the different disorders of mental health, but also what the difference between 2019 and now is. We'll talk about anxiety. We'll talk about suicidal ideation. We'll talk about the common therapy modalities. So whether it's internal family systems or cognitive behavioral therapy, we'll talk about what those things are. We'll talk about something that I get asked often. What's the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist? We'll briefly discuss that. It's just a very important information to know. And then in the same light, we'll talk about where does one begin if they're trying to go down the road of finding mental health help. Then we'll talk about the next episode of the Venture Forward, basically my journey with mental health. We'll basically tease that, and I'll have a reminder for all of you. Let's talk language of letting go. Language of Letting Go has been a book that has been a cornerstone to my mental health journey in the last 4 years. That is why we always talk about it on this show, and we'll continue to talk about it on this show. They've just had a major revision to Language of Letting Go, having new journal entries and new passages. Very excited to see that, and we'll talk more about that as we get our hands on the new version of the book and start sharing that with all of you. Nevertheless, this is actually the Language of Letting Go for October 30th. It'll be for Sunday. But this is about self-value. It goes something like this. We have a real life of our own. Yes, we do. That empty feeling that senses that everyone except us has a life, an important life, a valuable life, a better life, is a remnant from the past. It is also a self-defeating belief that is inaccurate. We are real. So is our life. Jump into it and we will see. Today, I will live my life and treasure it as mine. And that is the language of letting go. I love that one. It talks about everything we've talked about on this show since day one. We own our narrative. We own our life. This is our life. We don't own anyone else's life. We own our life. We have to take care of that life first and foremost. It is paramount. In order for us to take care of anybody else, we have to take care of ourselves first. That couldn't say it better. So remember, live your life and treasure it as yours, because guess what? It's yours. So do that. That said, let's talk about the reminder from the beginning, from the disclaimer, because it's worth mentioning. And as we cut this episode for up on YouTube, we'll trim it down to this, as well as the rest of the episode, obviously. But this is important to re-mention this, in the sense that you are worth it. So for mental health help, you can contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. Or if things are critical and you're feeling suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with the Crisis Center, call or text the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. Again, 988 or 988lifeline.org. We will talk about the genesis of 988 in a little bit on this episode. Is a very important lifeline for many, and the fact that it exists now instead of a long 800 number, it used to be 1-800-273-TALK, the fact that you could just easily dial 988 and get the help you need is very important. And go back to Maine for a second. There were a couple comments let me bring up real quick. Brad says, it is awful having the issues, dealing with them, talking about them, sharing them, all of it. Agreed, without question. Brad also says, guys, sharing them is really hard. Most of us don't know where to share them. But I have a great group of people I've met over the last year that make me feel comfortable sharing these things. Brad, I'm very happy to say that I'm part of that group too. And I'm very thankful for all of you. I love you all. And when I say that, I honest to God mean it. You have helped me more than you'll ever know. So I'm glad you're part of that group, and I'm glad you're here tonight. And Marilyn says, JV, you're a great inspiration to us all, with 3 purple hearts. 3 blue hearts back at you. Thank you. You, without a doubt, you inspire me too. So thank you. Thank you for all you do. Let's talk some statistics. This is where the conversation gets a little bit more deep, a little more number heavy, but this talks about how prevalent a situation this is. In the sense that 1 in every 8 people around the world live with a mental health disorder, whether it's anxiety or depression or bipolar or post-traumatic stress disorder or what have you. 1 in 8 live with a mental disorder. And it's only a matter of looking that up in the ICD-11 to figure out exactly which mental health disorder it is. But that is the statistic. That is the prevalence rate around the world. 1 in 8. When we start talking about the common ones, we start talking about stuff like depression, that's 5% of adults. When you're 60 or over, that number becomes 5.7%. And this is a worldwide number. That amounts to 280 million people worldwide suffer from depression. So 59 and under, you're about 5%. We don't even consider the adolescents in that number. It's an adult number. When we talk about adults 60 or over, it's 5.7%. A reminder about what depression is. During a depressive episode, the person experiences depressed mood, whether it's feeling sad or irritable or empty, or a loss of pleasure or interest in activities for most of the day, nearly every day, for about 2 weeks. 2 weeks seems to be the cutoff. If it's 2 weeks or more, if you go to the ICD-11, you talk to any psychologist or therapist or psychiatrist, they're going to tie it to depression. Now, there are different psychological treatment formats for consideration, including individual and group face-to-face sessions delivered by professionals or lay therapists. So basically your psychotherapist, your psychiatrist, any of those. These are the people that govern those sort of things. That's depression. Let's go one further. Let's talk about dementia. 55 million people in the world live with dementia. If you think about a world population of about 6-7 billion, that's a significant number. Basically, dementia, to remind, is a syndrome where there's deterioration in cognitive behavior and where you basically don't have, you're feeling something that is more than what is usual as far as biological aging. Now, granted, there is an expectation when you're 60, 70, 80, 90 that there's a deterioration of the mental health systems, your cognitive behavior. When you get older, though, faster than that, that is dementia. So it is something worth noting because 55 million people out of 6 billion suffer from it. And as you get older, the greater the chance that that actually becomes a thing outside of normal aging. I'm going to go back to Maine. There are a couple of comments. Rich Vibes is joining us on YouTube, saying, "Hey JV, hey everyone." Rich Vibes, the host of Sunday Night Live over on Mixcloud, Sunday afternoons at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Rich, good to see you as always. And we got Brad, who says, "I love the group of people, JV, because we can all step away for a while and decompress, be alone, take a break or whatever we need, and come back and pick back like we never left." The thing is, that is healthy. We have to start gaining our own sense of individualism, but in the most healthy, constructive way. When we fall off the rails and it is not healthy or constructive, that is when you need the group. Always you need the group when that happens. But the group may rely on you for members that are not doing well. So it's basically a quid pro quo sort of situation. You help the group helps you. I've had situations where I've had to take a step back for professional commitment in others, and that just happens. But to have individual time and trying to gain yourself is very important in all of this. And I'm glad you're here, Brad, and I'm glad that you're taking really good care of yourself, because there's only one Brad, there's only one you. I'm glad you're taking care of them. So, that said, we talked about depression. We talked about dementia. Let's talk about the main culprit now. Let's talk about anxiety. Anxiety affects 33.7%, nearly 34% of all Americans. They will have an anxiety disorder at some point in their lives. Let me liken it to a situation that I've experienced many times before. You're getting ready for a big deliverable or a big presentation, and you start feeling your chest close up, like you're having a heart attack. And there might have been an instance where you get rushed off to the ER to have EKGs and whatnot, only to find out that you're just having a panic attack. EKGs were didn't show any sort of cardiac distress, you had a panic attack. That is a classical anxious reaction. That happens more times than not. So when we think about anxiety disorders, it's a cluster of mental disorders that are basically characterized by significant and uncontrollable feelings of anxiety. Things that either have precipice on why we feel that way or are absolutely completely unfounded, in the sense that sometimes we become our worst critic and we have these sort of anxious reactions for no reason. That's not good. That requires therapy. That requires help. So does the former too. We can't go from 0 to 60 real quick without having that sort of feeling, right? In the sense that if we're always having that sort of anxious reaction given stress, that in itself is a problem. When we find that our social, occupational, and personal functions are significantly impaired, it's definitely a need for help. I mentioned occupational, but what about the teenager or the 20-year-old that's going to college and is getting ready for a midterm or a final and it's having the same sort of reaction? That in itself needs to be treated too. Looking at the grand scheme of things, anxiety has basically become the #1 mental health issue in North America. That's the United States, that's Canada, that's Mexico. It's #1. It affects many Americans, Canadians, and Mexicans. Outside of everything else in mental health, anxiety is #1. It's top of the list. Let's go back to Maine for a second. Brad says that he's been now over a month, needed a break and needed to chill. He's back, and it's right to get back at it. Like I said, Brad, glad you're back. Two changes, programming note. I'll definitely two changes this week, JV. One, our clocks go back Saturday night, so your times for the show will be 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. And two, this week it is Sunday Night Dead with Rich Vibes. You know, for Halloween, Sunday Night Dead. Honest, Rich Vibes, very entertaining live streamer, very entertaining DJ. Definitely recommend. You can catch him on Mixcloud. It's called Sunday Night Live, or at least this weekend, it's Sunday Night Dead. Rich, glad you're here. So, we talked about anxiety. We talked about how prevalent anxiety is. Let's go a bit deeper now and unfortunately talk about this then too. And that's suicide. Suicide is one of the sort of statistics that definitely has had a bump up due to the global health emergency that we've been dealing with for the last 2.5 years. According to the CDC, the age-adjusted suicide rate in 2021 was 14 per 100,000, and that's 4% higher than what it was in 2020 at 13.5. Now, these numbers are not as high as the numbers, well, the 2020 number wasn't as high as 2018. It's right around the 14. So it was getting better, and then it's basically struck back up upon the global health emergency that we've been dealing with for the last 2.5 years. So if you look at the graph on the left-hand side, the older you get, the more pronounced this becomes. There's a difference between the men up top, higher rates for men as far as deaths per 100,000 versus that of females. And you can see the cohorts there. We go 10 to 14 being the lowest, but as we get to the teenage years, there's a spike up at 15. We get to our mid-20s, it remains a bit stagnant. For males, it starts growing real quickly at the 25 to 34, through the 30s, and then once males hit 65 and up, it grows to nearly 40 per 100,000. Whereas with females, it decreases a bit. But you can see it's very much a prevalent thing. So it's something where you have to be really understanding of this. But if you're feeling ideation, again, I say, you have resources out there that can help you. And you have many professionals out there that work towards helping you as well, whether it is your psychiatrist or psychologist or what have you. They're very important. When we talk about the sort of research that the Collaborative Assessment and Management of Suicide Organization has done, CAMS, you have a study that was done in 2019 about adults 18 or older with serious thoughts of suicide or suicide plans or suicide attempts within a year. Well, you're talking about 3.5 million that had come up with a suicide plan. Now, of course, that is population adjusted, but 3.5 million. When you talk about those that have had plans and attempted suicide, you're looking at 1.2 million. When we talk about those that just attempted suicide without a plan, you're looking at 1.4 million. When you're talking about making no plans and attempting suicide, that's 217,000. But here is the big number. It's a big gray circle around all of those Venns. 12 million adults had serious thoughts of suicide. 12 million. So suicide and suicidal ideation is very much a serious thing. It is very prevalent. And it's more the reason why mental health and going to see therapy or going to see a psychiatrist is now more important than ever before. Again, I go back there. You talk about the major global health emergency that we've been dealing with for the last 2.5 years, and that sort of sense of distance, things being closed down, being in quarantine or whatnot. Those numbers increased. More the reason that you have resources and more the reason why you need to utilize them, without a doubt. Going back to Maine for a second. We had a couple comments about, there we go. Oh, there it is. Sorry. My comments jumped all over the place. Brad said, I was seriously under the impression that U.S. wasn't doing... Oh, this is about daylight savings time. Yeah, so daylight savings time in the United States is the first Sunday in November. So it goes, we go back to standard time. We fall back. There's been bills, at least proposed, about abolishing it, but they have not been passed as of yet. So this coming November, the first Sunday in November, we will be rolling the clocks back yet again and going back to standard time. So we talk about suicide and we talked about dementia and depression and anxiety. And there's more and more a reason why this amazing thing happened on July 16th. And the establishment of 988. So there used to be a 800 number that you could call that get you the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It was 273-TALK, 800-273-TALK. It has been reduced to 988. And not only is it a number that you could call, it's a number that you could text on your cell phone. That's important. Because if you're feeling that sort of ideation and you don't have the strength to talk to a mental health professional or someone that can help you, to text and have the same sort of ability is very important. The number saves lives by sending people urgent and local direction to mental health centers. Very urgent. When we talk about suicidal ideation, it is very urgent. There is no time to waste. There is no time to lose. So to have that sort of lifeline is very important. It's just as important as dialing 911 when you have a medical emergency or a law enforcement emergency. 988 is very much a very important thing. I'm very thankful that it exists without question. What happens when you use 988 is that a trained professional, a trained counselor will listen empathetically and ask important questions to provide proper support, basically triaging it to the right direction that it needs to go. You have very qualified people on the other end at 988 that are looking to do the best for you. So again, if you have ideation and you need to be put in touch with a crisis center, call or text 988, again, 988. You are worth it. We talked about therapy in a general sense before. We've discussed therapy before on the show. Let's talk about 4 major kinds of therapy that are being used right now across ACWs, LCWs, psychotherapists, in that of CBT, DBT, ACT, and my choice in that of IFS. CBT stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. So it's basically a mindset where you're moving from something that is helpful and realistic. It's a thought modification where you change your behaviors, and you change your behaviors to change thoughts, and it works cyclically. So you change your thought to change your behavior, and then you change your behavior to change thought, and they work part and parcel. That is the hallmark of cognitive behavioral therapy. Using the talk therapy construct, using open-ended questions, a therapist may figure out exactly what sort of behaviors need modification, and then there comes some sort of plan to help you do that very thing. That's the hallmark of CBT. Then we move to something called dialectical behavioral therapy, in that sense that this is for situations where there's a question of harm reduction and also improving relationships with others. The harm reduction could be versus oneself, it could be versus others. Basically, where harm is part of the treasure trove of sort of ways of acting on anger, acting on things that are bothering you. There is a harm-based sort of generality. What DBT does is that it works on reducing that, or finding ways to basically dismantle that, or at least offset that. It also talks about having a greater tolerance to distress and not acting out in harmful ways. So that is basically DBT in a nutshell. When we talk about ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, that becomes a question of developing commitment to actions that basically give you a value-driven life. So basically tying behavior to values and mores and working towards having a solid foundation of solid values that could drive your behavior. It works almost in the way that CBT does, but here it talks more to the value more sort of premise and honing in on what those values are for the life you want to live. Then lastly is the thing that has been part of my life for the last 3.5 years, and that of internal family systems. When we talk about internal family systems, it is not the only sort of modality that talks about parts theory, but it is a major component of IFS. That's why we talk about it a lot on this show, in the sense that everybody is comprised of multiple parts, many parts, right? And in that there are no bad parts. Every part is a valid part, is a part that needs to be honored. So we'll say, for example, that John's parts need to be honored and they all need to have some sort of representation. When they're all in harmony, then John's external systems would flourish. But then again, that's true for anybody. So if you think about yourself as a system of parts, and you have different parts that basically make you the person that you are, they have to be honored at some point. They have to be recognized. There is no such thing as a bad part. You recognize the part. When they all work in harmony, you are a better person therein. I'll go back to Maine for a second. I'm going to bring Brad's comment up for a second. Brad says, find your lifeline, never be without it again. Someone you know you can call and they answer 24 hours a day. You need someone like that, and someone needs you like that. Yes. Within the recovery circles, we usually consider those people maybe our sponsor, maybe members of our recovery circle that are there to help us. So those sort of people are very much important as far as our recovery. But in that sense, also for our mental health in general, to have those sort of people are very, very fundamental to us. Brad also continues to say, had no idea what maker, that means element. Yeah, I had no idea. That's why I just rolled over it. But I got the sense of what you were saying, so I hope I did your comment justice. So you may be asking yourself, what's the difference between a therapist, a counselor, and those that are in between? Let's talk about that for a second. A therapist or psychologist has a master's degree or a PhD in psychology, right? They perform sessions of anywhere between 45 to 90 minutes and mainly use talk therapy or psychotherapy to understand their patients. Basically, open-ended questions, also directed questions to work towards what is bothering or what is basically on the back of the patient's mind, and then walking to some sort of resolution so they could live a better life. The talk therapy component of psychology, the talk therapy component of your even your social workers, your therapists, very much important. Psychotherapy has definitely been a cornerstone for me in the last 3.5 years. My flavor of psychotherapy, of course, is internal family systems, but there are others that could best serve you. A psychiatrist, on the other hand, is a medical doctor. They have shorter sessions, but that's geared towards medication treatment or medication management through physical exams and treating the patient through a myriad number of medical concerns. So they'll look at all your internal systems and figure out exactly what is going on and best prescribe the sort of plan of attack that could best help you. So they treat you like a doctor would treat a patient, treating the whole body. The key is both a therapist and psychiatrist can treat mental health concerns, and both of them can diagnose. So you can get a diagnosis from either one of those people. The question then becomes who can medicate and who's going to use medical knowledge and also tie everything together to produce a more concrete sort of medication or concrete sort of prescription. And that's when you look at your psychiatrist for that. So then the next piece of this is, I'm seeking therapy. Now what do I do? The way you find therapy, first and foremost, is finding help at a site like psychologytoday.com, which we'll talk a little bit more in a minute or two. But you can also go online and use sites like Cerebral or BetterHelp or BetterHelp is probably the best one. I say Cerebral or BetterHelp. I was thinking of a third and it totally slipped me. I'll probably add that in the comments afterwards. Using basically a multitude of mental health therapy centers that are available through an app or a website, or you can go in person. You find a good in-person therapist using a site like psychologytoday.com to do so. The thing about therapy is this, and it's almost like the sort of steps that we take in recovery. You have to admit you have a problem. Let's take this one further. You have to admit that you want to get help with what's bothering you. Because when you do that, at least you're making the calls you need to find a therapist or a psychiatrist that can help you. When you do that, my first thing I would say, which is not even on this slide, is find 2 or 3 to see which one gravitates you the most, and then work with that one, right? You're not going to go to your first doctor, your first PCP, and say, okay, that's going to be my PCP going forward. You may want to find 2 or 3 doctors, 2 or 3 PCPs, and figure out which one understands your conditions the best, and then you work with that one. So always do your homework and always shop around, if you will, to see if you have a therapist that understands you and you understand them. When you do all your homework, meaning journal, meditate, do everything you're doing to help take care of you. The journaling component's going to help those sessions because it's going to give you things to talk about, things to work through. When you don't do the homework or you don't do the exercises that a therapist or psychiatrist will give you, you're really not taking this treatment to the best of your ability. So I will always say this, you're only as good as the work that you put into it. It's true for anything. You talk about the gym for that matter. You know, you think about performance at the gym and trying to lift weights or trying to get your speed faster or whatnot. You put in the work, there's a chance that you'll get there. You don't put in the work, there's a strong chance you won't. So putting in the work pays dividends without question. Can't stress this enough. Journal what is on your mind daily. Doesn't have to be in words, could be a doodle, could be a caption of a photo, could be a recording, video or audio. Truth be told, in my day one journal, there are plenty of entries in there. There are audio journal entries and video journal entries. Same objective though. I have something on my mind. I want to get it out and document it for my journal so I feel like I'm at peace with it. At least I'm talking about it. It's a very important exercise, and if you don't do so right now, I would suggest starting one. And get yourself a sort of communication between your mind and yourself and getting to a better place. You'll be really happy with what that will give you, without question. What happens is, at the end of the day, it's about finding your own inner peace and your own inner love so you can share that to any and all. Finding that inner harmony produces such an amazing effect for so many people that you come across. So, your love, your strength, your wisdom starts inside, always. Going back to Maine. Brad says, when I was 16, I sought help and lucked and scored the doc. On the first try, went again at 30, and it took 4 attempts to find the right one. No matter what, that search is always worth it in the end. Spot on, Brad. The search is worth it. Find a doctor that you understand and a doctor that understands you. Find that harmony, and you'll find the best therapy that comes out of it. Thank you for saying what you said there, Brad. Appreciate it. So when you go to a site like psychologytoday.com that has a large listing of different therapists and psychiatrists, you'll have a search engine that will give you options like this. It'll ask you what kind of therapy you want to take on. If you don't know specifically, that's fine. But there's some people that say, okay, I want to do internal family systems. So you do that. Or they want to do cognitive behavioral. There's that. There's trauma focused, mindful based, MBCT, psychodynamic. There might be a question of family or marital therapy. Definitely do that. Or acceptance and commitment, ACT. So there's a bunch of different sort of therapy types that are available for you. You find the one that you like. It'll give you a list of providers in your area. And as you can see, their internal family systems is definitely on that list. Another thing that's on that list that we will talk about eventually, hypnotherapy. And how hypnotherapy is actually grown over the years. It's become a very popular form of therapy. So we'll talk about that in an upcoming episode of the Venture Forward. That's one thing you can consider through something like psychologytoday.com. Another thing you can consider is this, in the sense that you may be interested in different issues that you're trying to tackle, in the sense of addiction, or ADHD, or anger management, or behavior disorder, or bipolar disorder, or grief, or family conflict. You can see the list there. It's only a small sampling of the different issues that you could use as your primary focus that you search for when you try to find a therapist that works for you. Relationship issues, definitely part of my calling card when we go back to 2019. When we talk about self-esteem, that's definitely part of it. When we talk about eating disorders, that was definitely part of it too. Finding a counselor or a therapist or a psychiatrist that could talk to those things is making sure that you're finding the best sort of treatment for yourself. And you definitely have the tools available to you. So you could find that sort of checklist at psychologytoday.com, as well as the different therapy types. Going back to Maine for a second. Truth be told, when I was trying to find a therapist, when I went down this road in, I think, April or May of 2019, as far as me trying to find a therapist, I found 3 therapists, and I had an appointment with each of them, and I gravitated to one. But I did my homework, and I figured out which one had a better rapport with me, and I had with them. But as Brad said before, you have to do that homework to find a doctor or a therapist that will work best for you. You know, there's something to be said about shopping around and finding a therapist that can actually talk to your ideals, talk to what basically works best for you. So you definitely do so through psychologytoday.com. Alternatively, if you use a site like BetterHelp or Cerebral, they will set you up with someone that best facilitates your needs through a questionnaire or two, and they will work to find you a therapist that could basically help you towards the therapeutic road that you need to be on. So there's a lot to be said about the different options that are available to you. As far as insurance is concerned, a growing thing that's been happening is you'll find some therapists that don't take insurance anymore, or they take different forms of insurance. So always do your homework and figure out whether or not the therapist that you're seeking out takes the insurance that you have, or figure out a way to take the payment methodology that you have to go through your sessions. To figure that out before you actually go through the appointments, obviously something that is important for not only you, but for the therapist too, to make sure that they have the right way of getting paid and you have the right way of paying them or paying their office. I find that to be something that is very much a question that comes up every now and then with respect to the my friends who are therapists. And again, it goes back to doing the right thing for your patients, but also playing well within this healthcare system we have in America, which we could spend plenty of hours on the things that we need to do to try to fix that, but we're not going to take that in this hour. Let's talk about what we're going to discuss on the next episode of the Venture Forward. My journey with mental health. It's a live episode on Tuesday, November 1st at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. What you see here are 4 hallmarks of what was the beginning of my mental health journey. We talk about Language of Letting Go, a very important book. We talk about a book called Body Keeps a Score by Bessel van der Kolk. I always get that tongue-tied there. Great book as far as healing trauma. We talk about You Are the Placebo, which is a phenomenal book, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the passages in there in just mere seconds, because there are a couple quotes I want to leave you with tonight. And then there is the triangle of internal family systems, as far as exiles and firefighters and basically managers as well. We've discussed that on the show before, and we'll discuss it a bit more on Tuesday. Those 4 books or 4 concepts have been a very strong foundation for what I've gone through. And we'll talk more about that, how I came about it, how I came across it on Tuesday night's episode. That's again at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. That said, a couple of thoughts from You Are the Placebo by Joe Dispenza. Great doctor. If you get a chance to see him on YouTube, I definitely recommend it. Very, very well thought out. Very great advice. Here are 2 nuggets that we're going to leave tonight's episode on. 1, when you combine a clear intention with an uncompromising trust and possibility, then you step into the unknown, and that's when the supernatural starts to unfold. Meaning, surrender sometimes. When you surrender, you allow yourself the ability to do anything. Because deep down inside, you can do anything, but your mind has to be in the right place to do so. So think about it that way. Clear intention, uncompromising trust and possibility, and the possibility can absolutely happen for you. The second is even more stark and very earnest, in the sense that your thoughts are incredibly powerful. Choose yours wisely. Let's go down a little bit on that one. Your thoughts, whether they are good or they're bad, they're powerful. So be aware of which ones you're choosing. Be aware of which thoughts you gravitate towards, because they will consume you. And these are the things that you're going to basically say, in the word that we've said on this show before, manifest. So you might as well manifest the good. Think about good things. Get your mind around good things, and you stand a chance of having good things happen. So we'll talk more about You Are the Placebo on Tuesday, as well as IFS, and a little bit from Language of Letting Go. A reminder, and we talked about this on Tuesday, but these are the adages that are on my whiteboard. It's worth mentioning again. This is sort of the mental construct that was very important for me. Sometimes you have to say to yourself, either this changes or it's the end. Well, if you're suffering from issues that you have no control over and you want to help it out, it's best to seek help for it. The first thing I realized when the weight came back on for the 3rd time is, there's something going on up here. I have to fix this first and foremost. That's when therapy became important. When you hit a bottom, when you're 480 pounds and you can't walk more than 5 or 10 feet without sitting down, there truly is no alternative. And it takes a very strong mindset to say, you know what? I can't go back. There's no way I can go back. To say that, putting a line in the sand saying, you know what? There's no alternative. I'm moving forward. That is the first sign to success. There's a lot of work that happens afterwards. But if you put that line in the sand and you say, you know what? I'm not going back there ever again, you stand a chance to do so many great things. Thirdly, enough is enough. So you think about my story again, in the sense of being 480 pounds, having an alcohol problem, and gambling. At some point, you have to say enough is enough. A morbidly obese type 4 with a BMI nearly 70, with a bottle of bourbon next to my coffee maker, and me trying to find a chance to gamble every chance I get instead of doing anything that's more productive or healthy for me. Enough was enough. But again, it takes a very strong mindset to put that line down and say, you know what? Can't live like this anymore. As far as what you want to try to get in this life, you have to ask for it. So think about this. You have not because you ask not, right? So if you have something in mind, ask for it to yourself, journal about it, put it on a vision board, what have you. But remember, you have not because you ask not. Sometimes the best thing you could do is ask. You never know what's going to happen. But it doesn't happen unless you do it. So think about that, right? When you want something, just ask for it. The worst thing that happens is you're told no. But at least you've given yourself the possibility of getting something. This next one is something we all know. One day at a time, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. We take that back to my story. There was no way everything was going to get fixed in one big swoop. It had to start with some sort of order of operation. It starts with the mind. It starts with basically tracking my food because I knew that was a system that worked for me 2 times prior, and then working from there. But you're not going to fix everything in one giant sort of movement. You have to work at it piecemeal, but you do it one day at a time, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. And then lastly, as we said on Tuesday, every moment is a gift. It is. We learn so much from this incredible journey called life that it's very hard to say that something is not a gift. 99 times out of 100, there's always 99 times out of 100, there's going to be good that could be extracted from any situation. We just have to be strong enough to see it. So every moment is indeed a gift. The past is a lesson. The past is things we learn off of. And tomorrow's no guarantee. But this moment is a gift. Going back to Maine for a second. I know that's something we talked about on Tuesday. It's something we've talked about before on the show. But it's worth mentioning every chance we get. The fact that we have this one life. We have this one journey. There is only one me. There's only one you. And we have the best chance to do amazing things for that person so we can then help others. That is what this show is about. That said, we have these serious conversations Tuesday and Thursday. Fridays are awesome as well. We have a conversation about anything and everything. A little something we call VF Talks. That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. on Pacific on Fridays. Wow, I wish I could talk straight tonight. It just went out the window, didn't it? 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific on Fridays. That's with Matt Haas, Paul Burke, and all of you. Definitely the most fun we have all week, and I enjoy it. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow night. And then the next episode of The Venture will be Tuesday, November 1st at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, when we talk about my journey with mental health help. And basically figuring out the best ways I needed to do to basically fix what was going on up here so I could fix the rest of me. It's a good story. I can't wait to share that with all of you. Two final comments from Brad. Brad says, even though I didn't know you're 480 pounds, just based on the man I know and the things you've accomplished since I met you, 2 marathons, constant work and positivity and forward movement, he continues to say, I'm super proud to call you my friend and very proud that I can openly say I take inspiration from you. Brad, thank you, sir. And likewise, you're very inspiring to me and I appreciate you big time. So thank you. This running thing has become a thing that I don't know where it came from, but I'm really glad it's here. I'm really glad I'm doing a 5K on Sunday. I'm glad I'm doing a 10K the week after. I'm glad I'm doing a half marathon on Thanksgiving weekend. I'm glad I'm doing the Portland Marathon again next year. And A little bit of breaking news. Didn't sign up for it yet. But I think I might be doing the San Francisco Marathon in July of next year. Don't hold me to that yet. I have not registered, but it keeps on coming up, and I'm thinking maybe that's something that happens next year. When it does, of course, I will let all of you know, because this running journey has just started, and I'm enjoying every second of it. So, that said, we'll talk more about the big race on Sunday, the 5K over in Bangor in the Poconos. But in addition to that, we'll talk about anything and everything, and we'll talk about a little something called Halloween as well. There might be costumes, just saying. But until next time, I'll say the same thing I say at the end of every Venture Forward and VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. We'll see you again tomorrow night for VF Talks at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific, right here on the Venture Forward. Have a wonderful night. I love you all, and fly, be free.